I'm here with Dr. Linell King today, and we're going to be diving into the primary category of brain health. Now, I've been talking about this a little bit on social media the past couple of days, and there's just a lot of high interest in understanding how this plays a big role in your health, because many of you guys that do follow me, you're dealing with chronic health issues, and you hear me talk about heavy metals and mold and parasites and drainage and Lyme and so many of these other things, breast implant illness. But one big pillar that a lot of practitioners forget to address, and honestly, a lot of clients or patients aren't as crazy about addressing because it's not really as sexy to most people at first because it's the hard work, is brain health and the ability to really rewire your autonomic nervous system, rewire your brain to get to the point where you can make it past some of these really challenging seasons or stages of healing. And so Dr. King's going to be joining us today to talk a little bit about that. But before we end up getting into that topic, I want you to just introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about you, because you started in the traditional medicine world. And I will just say it's one of my favorite things to hear about when I know practitioners that started in traditional medicine sharing how they see that the system was broken and how they transitioned into more integrated or functional medicine. So tell us a little bit about how that happened for you.
Yeah, well, first of all, very happy to be here and just love all the great work that you're doing, Alyssa. It's just fantastic. So thank you. Yeah, so I'm an MD. So I was trained University of Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin for medical school. I did my specialty training in internal medicine at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. I worked for over 15 years in the hospital system, taking care of people at their sickest. You know, most of the time we get them well enough to go home, but they just end up right back. Whether it's a year later, 3 years later, they end up back sicker, not healthier, right? On more medications, not less. And the reason is because we have a broken healthcare system that really focuses on the symptoms. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but I didn't know it, okay? And so I spent all this time thinking that I was doing, you know, what was standard of care, which unfortunately it is, and recognize that our system really is just focusing on the symptoms. And so when I found that out, I didn't want to be a part of that broken system any longer. So I got further training in what's called functional medicine or integrative medicine, the study of how the body functions optimally, getting trained to get to the root cause rather than just treating the symptoms. I made that switch in 2013, and since that time, I will tell you what, it has been mind-blowing. My mind is blown every single day. We've helped thousands of people really optimize their health, turn around illnesses that we were taught in medical school there was just no hope for, you know? And so it's really been an amazing journey. But there was always one thing that really was challenging, and that was when someone was just in a very, what I call a stuck place with their mindset or brain. When someone is depressed or they have anxiety, traumatic brain injuries, the wiring is a little bit off, they can't focus. It's hard to do the things that you have to put the reps in, right? It's hard to do those things. It's hard to be consistent to really recoup your health. And those people, it was just like, man, what in the world can we do? Like, how do we reduce the stress? Because it's a vicious circle. You have all of this stress, your brain's not functioning properly. So, you end up not really taking great care of yourself, eating like crap, or you're reacting emotionally as far as what you're eating, not really being able to do the things for self-care. And then that makes you even, more stressed and you have more anxiety and it's just a vicious circle. So it's like, where do we cut in here and stop that cycle? Whenever we are able to accomplish that, now there's nothing that we can't accomplish. And so it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. So that's like my main focus right now. And we've found some modalities that has just been mind blowing, literally, of what we're able to accomplish.
Yeah, so I would love for you to talk about some of the modalities that you use in your clinic. I know that when I've shared on social media, I talk to people about, I myself did the DNRS, so the dynamic neural retraining system. There's the Gupta program that's out there. Tons of people, I have really good friends of mine that have used tapping, this tapping solution, and loved it. I've done emotionally focused therapy or EFT. There's meditation. You know, I'm a really strong Christian, so I believe in leaning on your Savior during this whole process and really being in prayer. But talk to me about what you have felt has been substantially different for your clients. I know when you and I last talked, I said I was just starting neurofeedback, so I myself am in the middle of doing that as well. But talk to me about what you found to bring some of these incredible results for those stuck clients.
Yes, absolutely. So before I kind of go into one modality or another, let's kind of go and talk about what is causing the imbalances in the first place.
Yes.
Okay, because all of the modalities that you just mentioned, they work. There's no question. The question is, are we able to work them? And
Yes.
that's the key. That is what determines what's better for some versus others and things of that nature. So the question is, what are we trying to accomplish? What we're trying to accomplish is we're trying to establish new neural patterns. That is the key, okay? Because the brain is, as I'm sure everyone knows by now, we can change our brain, all right? It used to be where there's two things that we didn't think that we could change. And that is our genetics, and that is our brain. And now we recognize that, you know, it's like all the studies have just debunked that, and we can actually change both. And there's something called, you know, neuroplasticity, where we can create new pathways. And when we create new pathways, it's life changing. Okay, so what are the pathways? Now, what do I mean by pathways? Well, there's different types of pathways. There's the way that the brain communicates, and the brain communicates with what's called neurotransmitters. So that's more on a neurochemical level. Okay, so that's one way. There's the electrical, energetic communication. We're all energy, and the brain, you know, communicates energy. And there's also, when we really dig deeper into that energy, there's brain wave patterns. So just like when we do an EKG of the heart, right? We can tell a lot about the heart based on the electrical activity. The brain is no different. Instead of EKG, it's an EEG. But when you do an EEG, you just see a whole bunch of squiggly lines, right? It's pages and pages and pages. Now, in medical school, we were taught that, you know, when you do an EEG for people who've had seizures, that's it. We're looking for seizure activity. I didn't know anything, nothing else about EEGs other than that. But now what we found is that we can see very specific patterns. It is amazing. I can see someone that's having anxiety just by the electrical activity. I can see someone that's had a traumatic brain injury or a stroke just by the electrical activity, or someone that has post-traumatic stress syndrome, okay, or depression or ADHD, literally in the electrical pattern. So there are, not to get too technical, but there's different wave patterns, okay? We have the sleep, the deep sleep, that's the delta, okay? When you're sleeping, we go into these slower wave patterns that are very, very important, and they're the delta waves. And then we have theta waves, which are a little bit faster. That's kind of like when you go into meditation or meditative state, okay? And then we have the alpha. Now, when we're in a relaxed, calm, closed eye state, that's what we want most of. I call those the focus waves. Those are the waves that when our brain is focused and it's in sync, that's where we want to be. Then we have beta, which is higher. Then with gamma, that's even higher than that. Okay, so why in the world is all this important? We need all of these waves. So which wave is better? Well, it depends. If you're in deep sleep, we don't want to be in beta, right? We want to be in delta. Yep. So most of us are trying to function at a level that is going to be conducive to whatever we're trying to do. So we need to be focused. So the alpha wave, I feel, is the most important wave as far as that is concerned. So what we do is we do a QEEG, quantitative electroencephalogram. That way we can take all of the waves and we can look at it and we can literally see what you have most of. So in a closed eye relaxed state, we want to see low delta, low theta. We want to see a nice peak with the alpha, low beta. Okay, that is ideal. And then we check it in different parts of the brain, the posterior part, the central, the frontal, and it needs to be congruent. That is a normal brain pattern. So this is so fascinating. When we analyze someone that has chronic anxiety, or they have a post-traumatic stress syndrome or traumatic brain injury, what we see is we see a lot of theta that pops up in those states. And we see incongruence from posterior up to frontal. So it's not just about that pattern, it's about the fact that it's out of sync. Remember back in the day when desktop computers, remember we had to defrag them, right?
Yes.
When they get too much information and they start like going slow, you know, and we had to run a defrag to sync all of the whatever, you know, the bits and the bytes and all that kind of stuff, whatever that stuff is, right? We had to sync all that stuff up, and then the computer ran a lot smoother. This is the same thing, because what happens is the brain's not synced up. And we also want to sync it with the heart as well, okay? The heart, brain, gut, we won't get, you talk enough about gut, but all of those things are connected, and we want it all in sync. And when it gets out of sync, that's when we have challenges, right? So all of the modalities that you mentioned, their ultimate goal is to get the brain back into sync and get it into the appropriate wave patterns. Now, here's the challenge with some of them. Because I've tried EFT, I've tried tapping. There's another one that havening is very popular, and all of these things are phenomenal. Okay, here's the challenge that I have. If I am stressed, if I have a bunch of anxiety, or if I have ADD, which is kind of more what I struggle from as far as being able to focus, I'm not able to stick with it. I'll do it one day, but then I won't do it the next, and I'm very inconsistent. And then what happens when you're inconsistent? You get frustrated.
Yep.
You get frustrated. When you get frustrated, then what happens? That's more stress. I'm stressed out. In meditation, it was a big one for me. Oh my Lord, am I doing it right? Why can't I shut my brain off? This is stressful. Who can sit here for an hour and do this? I have things to do. You know, all of this stuff.
I was the same way. I know so many people relate.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, this is supposed to be relaxing. It is not relaxing for me, you know? So for now, don't get me wrong, I'm a big, huge fan of meditation. The challenge is that we have as humans is that we're human doers and we're not human beings. Or, you know, we are human beings, but we don't act, you know, we don't really function that way. And the more that we do, the more that we're just kind of spinning our wheels. We think our ego is telling us that we're actually accomplishing something. But we really truly accomplish something when we get out of our brains, into our hearts, connected with the larger life force, you know, spirit, God, universe, we're all connected. And that is when things happen that are beyond what we can control. Thank goodness, right? Because if we had to, you know, if we had to remember to breathe, oh my, we'd all be dead, right? If we had to remember to tell our heart to beat, oh, we'd be in trouble. So it's this higher power that connects all of us and that runs all of our system. And once we connect to that, that is when it becomes extremely powerful. And that's what meditation does. That's why I'm such a big fan of it. But if you're if your brain patterns are such where it's very hard for you to drop in, then some of these other techniques, tapping is a very good one, you know, to kind of settle you down, get you out of the sympathetic into the parasympathetic, okay? And then this brings me into what's called MeRT therapy, which is magnetic resonance therapy. This is phenomenal. And the reason why I love this is because it's it's literally using magnetic stimulation to create new neural patterns and to sync the brain. It is that defragger, okay?
Wow.
And the reason why I love this so much is because all you have to do is show up and sit down, and it's not like you have to concentrate on something. It's not like you have to do something, you know, it's a more of a passive kind of treatment type of thing. And I'm a big fan in empowering people where they can actually do things themselves and not, I don't like dependence on things, but this is something that can get you over that hump so that you can meditate more, so that you can stick with your eating strategy more, so that you can be more consistent with your exercise, with your breathing, with all of your self-care. It gets you over that hump so that you're able to do these things. And that's why I love it. And the scientist in me, you know, the MD in me, I love it because it's objective. We can see the brain patterns. We can see, you know, the big theta peaks in our traumatic brain injury. And then after going through a few weeks of the magnetic resonance therapy, we literally see that peak go away, and we can see that alpha wave rising, and it correlates with the person sleeping better. It correlates with the person being able to be more focused, calm, have better relationships. Their whole life is changed. It is amazing.
Now, I want to pause you for a second, if you don't
Yes.
mind. So when someone's doing a therapy like this, how long, how many sessions? Like I know for neurofeedback, a lot of times people will do between like 30, 40 sessions. Like 40 is, I think, typical, at least in my area here in Pennsylvania, that is very common. How many sessions or how long would someone normally do the MeRT therapy?
The same.
Okay.
The same. It's a 4-week therapy session, Monday through Friday. Okay, only takes about 15 minutes each day. Okay, so that is the typical therapy. Now it works phenomenal for kids with autism, and for kids with autism we recommend 6 weeks. This is the only thing that I've found that was able to change the brain patterns where we can actually see kids that were nonverbal start to become verbal.
Wow.
Kids that were not sleeping start to sleep. And for any parent that has an autistic kid, we know how big of a deal that is. You know, that's a huge, when we're starting to see changes in behaviors, sleep patterns, you know, communication, being more engaged, more interactive versus being withdrawn, it is it's a life changer. It really is. And so because those patterns, those wave patterns are ingrained a lot deeper, you know, with kids with autism, it takes a little bit longer. But you know, I mean, 6 weeks versus 4 weeks, you know.
Yeah. So you have someone that would come into your clinic on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, for 15 minutes or so. I'm assuming you're putting some type of headset on them or some type of electrode set up.
Yes, for the EEG. So every 2 weeks we check an EEG because we're monitoring, you know, the pattern. So we have a cap. So it's no longer where you have to, you know, put the electrode stickers, you know, back in like the old days. We have a cap with the electrodes in it, and we do an EEG. And then the treatment is literally, it's a magnetic device that we put at different points in the brain depending on the EEG. So what we're doing is we're syncing the brain and the heart. Okay, so we check an EKG, the electro, and the EEG. We're syncing those two, and then we're seeing what areas of the brain that we need to stimulate. And so it's a whole algorithm that is applied,
Yeah.
and it's phenomenal.
I would say, for people that know about neurofeedback, that is one of the primary differences here of what you just explained to me, because I wear the same cap every time I go in. I go 2 days a week for neurofeedback, and we're watching interactive games, on TV, or you'll watch Netflix movies. And if your brainwaves don't align, then, the video dims out, or, the sound dims out, or things like that. But for you to be able to bring it in and connect it with the heart is incredible.
Yes.
Wow. So how long have you been doing the MeRT therapy? Because clearly this is something that is very substantially different from a lot of other things out there.
Yes. And so we have done neurofeedback. We've done a lot of things. The MeRT therapy, we have literally just launched it this year. And so it is, it's been around for quite some time, but believe it or not, it's something that mainly they knew about in the military more so than anywhere else. Well, at least, here in America. Europe is a whole different a different thing. They could have been using this quite some time there. But the reason why in the military is because it's something that is very effective with post-traumatic stress. And so for the wounded warriors and things of that nature, the results has been phenomenal. So it's been used in that sector for so long, and it's just now really becoming known into, the civilian world.
Absolutely. So have you found that you had patients that were doing, DNRS, Gupta, neurofeedback, all these other things, and maybe they saw some improvement, but the substantial improvement and the wall really came down switching to this other therapy? Have you seen that switch flip?
Yeah, and again, it's mainly because of compliance, okay? Because I don't really want to take anything away from all of the other modalities, because I think that they're fabulous. It's the compliance part that is challenging,
And
and
the passiveness, and I even think about that with neurofeedback. You're showing up, and your job essentially is to just blank out your brain. I think this is just a step up from that, where you're connecting it to the heart and you have the bioresonance aspect of it. I think both of those would be two really good options, just like you said, because I had done DNRS, and the goal with that is that you're doing it every time you catch yourself being sensitive to something, and you have to be super self-aware and very dedicated. So that's such a great point, that depending on the personality, maybe it's more of an investment for someone with some of these programs. Many times it is more than just getting another program that you self-navigate. But I encourage the people that are listening and watching this right now is that sometimes you may have to say, okay, do I want to go with the cheaper program? And do I feel like I can rely on myself to take the initiative to do this to the degree I need to see results? Or do I need to say, hey, I need to more financially invest because this is going to work, because I know me, my personality, I'm probably not going to stay compliant to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then it's complementary, right? Because now, once you go through something like this, you're going to get better results from all of the other therapies, right? Because you're going to be more compliant. The brain is able, once you change those brain patterns, they're more able to change even further, right? And so they're more flexible, they're more plastic, if you will, right? So that is, I feel like it's, what it's like? It's like you're playing golf, right? For those who, even if you didn't play golf, you could imagine this. When you're teeing up, if you just make a little shift, just that much, right? It doesn't seem like much, but now the trajectory of the ball is going to end up in a completely different place. And the reason why is because you're starting out kind of like at the root of all of this. Once the anxiety happens and you're trying to tap it away, once your brain is just firing, and you're just trying to calm it down. Once you're trying to train the brain, you're trying to put the cat back in the cage, or the tiger back in the cage, it's a lot more challenging. Okay, but once you get kind of more at the upstream, and we're literally changing it on the brain and the heart level and syncing those up, now everything else becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you completely agree with and are on board with addressing a lot of the same root causes that I do, right? So when you have people come into your clinic, are you oftentimes starting these things where maybe you would identify someone has a lot of signs of parasites or heavy metal or, mold toxicity, some type of biotoxin illness? Will you often pair these together? Will you sometimes start with just the toxicity and pathogenic load and then go into this later if you feel like you can only get someone so far? How do you decide that in your clinic?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And what's interesting is because I am quite I do less treatments than the average functional medicine practitioner. I actually do less testing. I do less treatments. I mean, we can do all of it, but what we really do is we really focus on the foundations. I really want to empower the person that I'm working with. And so really boosting their immune system, really getting their eating strategy dialed in, And so once we do that, then a lot of that other stuff gets better. Okay. Their body's able to properly detox. We do the gut repair, all of this stuff. So we try to focus less on quote unquote treatments. Now, this is something completely different because the reason why we're focusing on a treatment modality on this end is because we can't get there if someone's not able to really focus enough to be able to do some of the foundational work. Okay.
Yes.
That's the key. And so then this enhances their ability to do that. Now, once they have done all, they've changed their eating strategy. We've cleared the gut. We've gotten rid of the leaky gut. We've strengthened their immune system. We got them out of fight or flight. Once we do all that, and now say they're still having some issues or what have you, that's when we refer them out to kind of like, specialties that deal with Lyme or that deal with parasites or deal with these other things, because those are like the 10% that, may need some, more aggressive treatment therapies.
Yeah.
That's not what we do.
Awesome. Yeah, I love this. So remind everyone where you are located, because clearly I have a very completely virtual practice, right? I'm assuming because you need this machine, there's no way that you could some people will do bioresonance work through certain frequencies. There are plenty of programs out there. I'm actually studying one right now where they can do it through a virtual practice. Are you able to do any of this work virtually with someone? And if not, tell someone exactly where you're located. Where do people fly in to see you? There are plenty of clinics where people will fly and stay there for 4 weeks or 6 weeks. And
absolutely, we have partnerships with some of the local hotels. People come in and exactly right. They'll fly in for a month or what have you. And the reason why they do is because there's not many clinics, unfortunately, that offer this. And so we're probably, everything else we do virtual. This is the only thing that we don't do virtually. But we're in Naples, Florida. And so not a bad place to come hang out and vacation. But we're in Naples, Florida. And we do the initial evaluation just to see if I feel that, this is the right fit and things of that nature. We do all of those virtually. So if someone wanted to reach out and do a virtual consultation, that's where I would start prior to, looking for plane tickets. And the way to really engage with us is just going to our website, naplesvitality.com.
Awesome. Oh, I love it. I know every time I see you at one of our events in the mastermind that we're in together with a bunch of other incredible practitioners, that's where Linell and I met. You guys are always bundled up no matter where we're at, because you're like, we are from Florida. We're used to being warm. Oh my goodness. I know Kashima is always, all bundled up. So, but yes, guys, I mean, I've done it before. I'm a big advocate of, if there's a place that does a specialty like this and you're serious about it, there are plenty of hotels that will give specials for long stays, Airbnbs, and I'm sure that your clinic, works very strongly to be able to make that a great experience, and no better place to do that than Florida. So absolutely. That is awesome. Is there anything else that you can think of that's super top of mind for you, Linell, that you wanted to add in that we didn't cover yet today?
I think that I just want to let everyone know that there's always somewhere that you can start, because anything that you do in addition to what you are doing is going to be helpful. So pick something, commit to it, and it could be a phone call. It could be looking up, Naples Vitality. It could be, you know what, I am going to cut out processed foods. It could be, I am going to start trying to meditate every single day. Whatever it is, pick something, and then just say, I'm going to take action starting today. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter how small.
Beautifully said. I mean, even prioritizing sleep. I mean, I tell people, we can do all the things. I love, the cell core comprehensive protocols. I love addressing drainage and toxicities. But if you're doing all this stuff and you are getting 5 hours of sleep, or getting it during the non-optimal hours, or you're not regulating your circadian rhythm by getting morning sun or, evening sun before you go back in, or grounding, all these things are free practices that we want to do all the other sexy stuff. And then sometimes we kind of want to complain about how expensive it is to do all the other sexy additional things when it's like,
we're not doing the free stuff.
Right. Exactly. Spot on. Oh my goodness. It was such a pleasure having you. I'd love to, after you get more of, these under your belt, I'd love to bring you on and have some case studies, and maybe you can give some examples of what you have seen. We can kind of share the screen and break down what that looks like potentially in the future. I think that would be so cool. So thank you so much for taking time. I know you are incredibly busy, like I am as well, but thank you so much for joining us today.
You are welcome. Thank you. Take care.